it's just crazy timing. I was obviously traded like a week later after that, but I just felt like God was preparing me for some things that are about to happen. And obviously, got traded like a week later after that.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, keeping Jesus in the sports conversation. Here's your host for today's show, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Clay Holmes, welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and enjoying the off season. Feel like it's flying by, but ready kind of get the baseball thing going at this point, and good to be here with you.
It's your what, sixth year? Does that sound right? Sixth year in the big league, seventh year. Is it seven?
Five, maybe
Five.
six.
Okay.
2018, that was first year.
18. Yeah. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. This is sixth year coming up.
Oh,
So your sixth year coming up in the big leagues. My question to you, I guess, to start, and this wasn't even on any of my prep, but just thinking about the off season, what have you done now differently, or maybe are you doing now differently than you did when you first got to the big leagues, if anything? Or has your off season kind of remained consistent in the way that you've approached it?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a little changes, kind of like with the workouts and the timing of those things and what those look like. I feel like the older I get, it's a little easier to gain strength, or you lose strength a little less, so that's becomes less of a priority. But I don't know. I feel like I kind of do the whole thing where I don't really stop throwing very much. I take like 2 weeks off in the season, but I lightly throw. Whereas if I was early on, I would kind of do the traditional stop throwing for a few months. I don't know. I throw less distance and maybe more off the mound. Now I feel like that kind of works for me, but um, nothing crazy different. But you learn the little things that kind of make you tick and help you be in a good spot going to spring.
When you think about this past off season, it's been a very active one around the big leagues, and particularly with the team that you play for, adding some pretty good talent to your rotation. In Rodon, you got Judge back. It's a good time. You had a good year last year. You obviously didn't go as far as you would like, but you went a lot farther than a lot of teams went. When you think about this year, it's got to be pretty exciting, especially because it was such a breakout year for you last year as well personally. It has to be pretty exciting when you think about what 2023 could bring.
Definitely. With the Yankees, everybody's goal obviously going the year is the World Series and nothing short. But come off last year, I feel like obviously keeping Judge around, is huge. He's the leader of the clubhouse, and sets an example that not many people can set. So it's obviously really good to have him back, on and off the field. But it's a team that I feel like there's a lot of good pieces, a lot of good clubhouse. There's a lot of talent. And I feel like we kind of had that last year, and obviously, a little bitter ending there at the end. But I think there's a lot of belief in the guys that we have. Obviously adding Rodon, and a few other pieces have been really big as well. But I think we're excited. It's a good group. We enjoy going to work with each other, and I think there's some the potential for some really big things ahead.
One of the questions I like to ask on this show, being the intersection of sports and faith, are the lessons that we learned from God throughout our lives and throughout different seasons of our lives. Last year was a really cool year for you as you ascended and be able to have really one of your best years, if not the best year that you've had, and you make an all-star team. There was lots of great things that took place from an outsider looking in perspective as far as performance, right? But for you, when you look back at 2022, and it can be performance-based, it could be spiritually based, but what do you think is a lesson that God taught you when you look back at what you were able to kind of experience and go through in 2022?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing for me is it sounds crazy, but learning to rest. I mean, it can be hard at times, just because, for one, the culture we live in, and almost being busy and have stuff going on is almost seen as successful. And but I don't know, when you start to experience some type of success, and even playing in bigger market like New York, things can kind of start to get hectic. And even when you're by yourself doesn't always mean you're resting, and learning just kind of what true rest is. I think that kind of one of the passage in the Bible that kind of I would find myself going back to is just Psalm 23, and just kind of that rhythm of life that David was figuring out. The first thing he did before he was led to the path of righteousness and was walking with God is he learned to rest and to lay in the green pastures, to trust in God's provision. I think for me, it's a mental thing of just learning how to rest in those things and trust, that God's kind of brought you to a place and he's going to continue to lead you. And you can find a lot of rest in that.
I wanted to ask you, I want to go deeper into your faith journey in a second, but it made me think about last year. You got to be a part of the All-Star team, which is pretty awesome and pretty cool to experience. And I've been to a few All-Star games, and it's quite the experience just as a fan and as a person covering baseball. What was that experience like for you last year when you got to go through those few days and get that opportunity?
Yeah, the opposite of rest.
I know, right?
It was pretty crazy. Obviously, it's a special thing. It's what a lot of people dream of. For me, you dream of kind of being an all-star, and just the surrealness of being there, and then a clubhouse with a lot of the greats, and just to being among your peers and the best of them. But there's a lot going on, and it's it was a very cool experience. I'm glad that my family got to go out, my wife, and it was an experience not just for me but for my whole family. And I think that man, it's something that I'll always be able to look back on and have a lot of good memories of. And obviously, I got to pitch in it as well. So just an incredible experience. But it was a whirlwind for sure.
Well, hopefully you get a lot more experiences, right? That means you're having a pretty darn good career. But there's very little rest, right? People don't see all the different things that you are going to, and I don't want to say dragged to, but that is part of the experience, right? When you're a player, you're okay, you got to go to home run derby, but there's all of these obligations that people don't see. So you're right. It really is very little rest, right?
Definitely. And it's all good things, like I said, busy's not bad, or being involved in a lot of things is not bad. I love playing in New York. Obviously you love being an all-star. It's great things. But it's just learning how to navigate those things. Because if you don't, you can find yourself, kind of just worn out and beaten down. And if you don't take the time to, find some rest, when you need it.
Is the being on the road a place where you can kind of find some solace and find some quiet time? Because I'm guessing, I don't think you have roommates. I think every player gets their own room. I could be wrong on that, but you have time on the road that you might not have time. Obviously you miss your family, and of course you want to be around them and your wife and all that. But when you're on the road, there feels like that could be a time to really be able to rest a little bit, even though you still have to play games.
Definitely. I think that a lot of players, when you try to do Bible studies or whatnot, a lot of people like to do them on the road just because you do feel like you have a little more time. There's a little more downtime and rest. You don't have to worry about driving to the field. You're taking a bus. Some things are kind of a few more things are taken care of. There's brunch provided at the hotel. So it's one of those things where it just kind of feels a lot slower on the road, as weird as that may sound. And so I think it's people, when you're on the road, it's maybe a little slower pace, and you can kind of unwind a little bit.
You mentioned Bible study. Is that something you guys were able to have and do and attend and be a part of last year?
We actually had a chaplain as our first year that I really kind of grew pretty close to, and was awesome. But nothing ever, not like a formal Bible study, I guess you would say, like on the road or whatnot. But there was contact and conversations, but nothing formal, I guess, as you would say. But
and there's chapel on Sundays, right?
Definitely, yeah. COVID kind of messed that up a little bit, but last year we were able to get that going again, and it's nice to I don't know, just gather together and kind of be in a room with a set intention with other believers. So it's always nice to have, and we did that in Boone's office, which is a cool thing.
We're talking to Clay Holmes from the New York Yankees here on Sports Spectrum. You grew up a PK, pastor's kid. I have to imagine that's where your journey with Christ began as well. But what was that like growing up? And is it Slocomb, Alabama, and being a PK?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of attachments with being a PK or preacher's kid. It's I don't know. I've kind of always wondered that why there's so much expectations, and I don't know. It's like you never hear somebody say, "Oh, this is a banker's kid," but
Yeah, BK.
gets around, "Oh, this is a preacher's kid." But I don't know. Maybe that's helped me kind of navigate and deal with some of the expectations that come along with I don't know, the sports world and baseball and those things. But no, it's incredible and something that I'll always be thankful for. It's just the example that my parents have set. Not just my dad, but just to be able to see them, serve Jesus and serve others, and just be the joy of their life. And even when there's times where there's not much fruit, there's a lot of fruit. You kind of just get to see the whole thing and just to see the example they set, and it just kind of be their joy no matter what. Was something that definitely always be with me and something I remember, and hopefully it's something I can pass down to my kids one day. But I don't know, I feel like growing up I was either, we lived right beside the church, so I was either at church or at a ball field or at school. Those were the three places I was kind of raised, I feel like. But I don't know, so just some really good memories, just little things like on Wednesday nights, my dad would prepare a meal for like 200 or 300 kids. And every Wednesday for my whole life growing up, he would pick me up from school. We'd go to the grocery store, get all these groceries. That whole afternoon would be doing homework and making this meal. And I think just being included, just in the serving of others, there's from a young age, I was included in it. I got to experience it. And I think that there's a little different about just reading something, and obviously my parents just kind of put me in it. And so, something that, like I said, I'll always be thankful for. And it's an example that was set that, hopefully, I can, even though maybe I'm not a pastor, I can, pass down to my kids one day.
Well, they always say your ministry is wherever you are, right? And so you as a baseball player, that's become your ministry. Your dad's ministry was a pastor and serving others. When you started to realize that this baseball thing could be something that, might lead to being drafted, might lead to some opportunities to go pro, how were you able to navigate all of that and still kind of not lose who you were as a follower of Christ and as, a person growing up in the faith? Like, how are you able to kind of navigate what we talk about here, the intersection of your world as a baseball player and being, a man of God?
Yeah, I think, kind of when I started to realize, this baseball thing could be something, was probably around like my junior, senior year, high school. And, I think that's kind of when I first started to kind of realize that there were some things ahead, but I also started to realize that, hey, for me, it's kind of when Jesus started to become, my Lord. And a lot of people kind of, you heard it say, like I was saved when I was, 11, 12 years old, when Jesus was, my savior. I kind of confessed that and believed that. And it's something that, I wanted to walk with, for the rest of my life. But I say around that junior, senior year of high school was when I started to realize that, hey, like the things that, Jesus's, commands and his ways are kind of what I want to follow. Like, is when, some people say he becomes like your Lord almost. Like,
yeah,
I think it kind of helped me navigate that space of what should I do? What is this? How just to reflect on what's going on and kind of make decisions going forward. But it's tough, grow up as an athlete, the whole identity things, it's very hard to navigate. But I think kind of that junior, senior year is kind of when I started to realize that, his ways are right. And this is kind of what I want to follow. And I think it kind of helped me start to navigate some of those, decisions.
I want to ask you about patience because you were drafted in 2011 by the Pirates, ninth round, right out of high school. And it wasn't until 2018 that you made your debut. That's 7 years. That's a long time of grinding in the minors and hoping to get your chance. How was your faith tested during those years in the minors as you waited for that chance to get that opportunity for your make your big league debut and to get that opportunity to get to the majors?
Definitely. I mean, it wasn't easy for sure. Obviously, I went through the Tommy John surgery. That was a year or two. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of bus rides and a lot of patience, but I kind of knew what I was signing up for. Out of high school, I knew that, being out of high school and like I was a pretty raw talent. So, there was going to be some refining that needed to take place, maybe longer than I wished. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of years, but, look back on those years and I mean, met a lot of great people and you go through things with some teammates that really, just remind you kind of, why you play the game and just, there's a lot of good people you meet along the way and, a lot of moments in those 7 years that, I wouldn't trade for anything and people I've met and people that have had, influence on me, still this day that I keep up with. So, it's some of it maybe perspective, it's definitely some hard, long years, but I think there's a lot of refining and kind of relationship building that have impacted me. And ultimately, I think, is the reason why I, made my debut and got to the big leagues.
Well, you're also 18 years old, right? When you start your pro career and you're 25 when you make your big league debut. That's a big difference in growth. That's a huge time for a young man to grow, right? From 18 to 21, usually those college years, and you're doing it in the professional level. And then you make your debut at 24, 25, and suddenly there's like that little progression of maturity. So I have to imagine a lot was going on, not just as a baseball player and growing, but as a person.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a maturity process that, everybody has to go through, but combine that just with, the baseball thing and, something you've been good at your whole life. So you maybe start to experience failure for the first time. It's learning how to deal with those things. It's just, it's a process that it's worth it, but it's, definitely not easy. And like you said, there's a lot of maturity that comes in place and just, learning how to deal with life and, just how to navigate certain things. And, luckily for me, I was able to lean on, some very good people. I was surrounded by a lot of good people that I could lean on a little bit. And I think that's, something the Pirates really, really did a good job with. Just, being surrounded by people that can help navigate those things. And, something I'm very thankful for.
All right, take me through the cities that you played in, if you can remember this, from your I guess your first professional team to when you got to the big leagues. And I'm asking this for a reason, but I figured I would start with you kind of walking us through the different cities you played in.
Yeah, so I was first drafted, signed while I was, out of high school that August. I flew down to Bradenton, Florida. That's where our spring training complex is. The next year, I went to extended spring training, which is down in Florida, and then went to State College, Pennsylvania. That's where our short season is. Mm-hmm. The next year, I was in Charleston, West Virginia for the full year. The next year, it was 2014, is when I had Tommy John in spring training, so I missed all of 2014. 2015, finished the rehab process, played in high A, which is there in Bradenton, Florida. Then went to AA in Altoona, Pennsylvania for a full year, and then AAA 2017 for the first year, which is in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay, so that I asked this for a reason. I mean, there wasn't any kind of obscure, crazy cities that you probably went to, but it's a little bit of a culture shock, right? To go to different cities every year. coming from Slocomb, Alabama, right? And so what was that like for you to kind of navigate through those years in the different cities, in the different places? Because you're only there for a short time, and you probably realize that. You're hoping you're there for a really short time, right? And you get that call. But those aren't, huge cities or huge places, and they're also a little different than I'm sure what Alabama was like. What was that like for you just living in those cities and kind of going from city to city? And then Indianapolis, my daughter's in college out near there, and it's a great city, great area in Indiana. But just what was it like to be kind of in those different, you know, geographical places, I guess I'll say?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, all very different for different reasons, but I think something that's always been a part of me is just the love for adventure. I love just
Good.
adventuring and new things, and I think that part of me, um, really helped me kind of navigate just the newness and the change and experiencing all these new things because I think because of that, I enjoyed, going to new places and seeing something new and, being somewhere I've never been before. So to me, it kind of kept things kind of invigorating for me. I enjoyed that aspect of the minor league baseball. There's always a next place to look forward to and somewhere, whether you're traveling to certain places within that league or you go to a different league in a different city. It just feels like you're always going somewhere new and kind of venturing in new places. And I think that's a part of me that that enjoys kind of what the game of baseball brings. You see a lot of places and experience a lot of new things. And to me, it's one of the reasons why I enjoy baseball.
What's your favorite memory from April 6th, 2018, the day you made your debut?
Favorite memory. Let's see. So I remember it was very cold and rainy. Mound was pretty wet and slick, but I don't know. I think my brother and my wife were able to be there. And my parents they originally flew to Detroit and they were able to somehow make the trip to Pittsburgh. So they were there when I made my debut, and it's just a special moment. Obviously, it's something you work for your whole life, and to experience with others that have just supported and encouraged you so much, been there through all these crazy minor league years. It's just it's a moment that's kind of much bigger than yourself, and just kind of being in that and get to experience it was special. And it's there's a lot of things that you kind of remember from those days, but I think just being with my family and getting to experience it, with them and some friends was big. Obviously, a guy I did Tom John rehab with, Jameson Taillon, he was on the team. Yep. So you started to you have shared experiences with these teammates and that you go through, and it just makes celebrating special moments like that more special, kind of with your teammates or whether it's family. And so I think just the people I got to be surrounded with and enjoy that experience with kind of made it complete for me.
3 years later, and I think every baseball player in the back of their mind probably thinks, I could get traded at any point. You could go somewhere else. You kind of have to be always aware that God might guide you somewhere else on this journey, not to get too comfortable. And yet here it comes to you, July 26th, and you go from Pittsburgh to New York, and you go to the Yankees, the most famous baseball team of all time. What was it like for you to find out you were being traded? Maybe some of the wrestling, if you did any, with God, not wrestling, I guess, but just, what it was like communicating with God and saying, okay, Lord, I trust you here. And then getting to New York, which you talk about culture shock. If you go from Pittsburgh to New York, and especially with the media and everything that surrounds this baseball team, what was that experience like for you when you found out you were getting traded?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy experience. And honestly, looking back on it, just the timing of things, of some stuff that was I was wrestling with personally, and just the timing of when the trade, I just could see kind of God's hand at work in all of it. Thankfully, I don't know. I mean, so in 2019, I was a starter coming up in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
2019 was my first year as kind of the quote failed starter, getting moved to the bullpen. pitched to, over 5 ERA, not the most successful year. I just kind of remember that as kind of when I really started to wrestle with just the whole identity thing. Just, I don't know, baseball and God and this relationship of like, I know I say I believe these things, but what actually is like going on with just my longing desires, and what do I just seek with all of this? I don't know. It just kind of led to a few years. I mean, I kind of, fast forward a little bit, but there's some stuff that go on in those years, but
Yeah.
of just kind of dealing with that tension, just kind of, trusting God to kind of, what do you want to show me with all this? And it's crazy. I remember in 2021, I had just given up 5 runs in an outing for the 3rd time that year. And one of those outings as a reliever is pretty tough. I mean, it takes you a whole month to work the ERA back down after one of those outings. But
Yeah.
my 3rd one, and my ERA was, kind of went up to, around that 5 ERA mark again. And I just felt like honestly, there's kind of felt like a little crossroads for me. Like, this could really go one way or the other for my career. Like, I could, if I finish this year out, at this pace, I mean, just who knows what could really happen, like, or if this is going to work out, this is kind of where things need to be figured out. Like, I don't know, but there was an off day after that outing we had in San Francisco. I just will always remember this moment. My wife and I, we crossed the Golden Gate Bridge and went up some of those hills. I enjoy doing some photography stuff. It's kind of a hobby of mine.
Yeah.
But it was kind of up, just taking some pictures. The sun was setting, kind of the moon was coming up over, San Francisco, and just the bay there and the bridge. It was just a great setting. And I just remember like feeling this peace there of like I don't really know, like, where this baseball thing's going to go. Like, I don't know, God, you could like almost, if I'm a photographer, I don't know where I'm going, who knows? But it's just like, I just remember there, it's like, I just kind of want to experience God work and his power in my life. And just like, there's got to be more than just hanging my hat on this identity of, baseball thing. And I don't know, I feel like kind of that moment's, kind of have one of those, kind of prayer moments. But when I think back on that time, it's almost like Romans 12:1-2 kind of comes to mind, of just being a living sacrifice. Like, you present the gospel and these things, but like in response to that, it's like your life becomes this living sacrifice. And it's like, I feel like I had kind of that moment. But anyways, I kind of started dealing with these things, and it's just crazy timing. I was obviously traded like a week later after that, but I just felt like God was preparing me for some things that were about to happen. And obviously, got traded like a week later after that. I just remember the whole time through all of the trade and everything, I just had this sense of peace. Like, God's kind of, at work here, and wherever I'm at, whether it's Pittsburgh or baseball or not, I had this peace. And, I don't know, things kind of turned around that year. And obviously I started to, figure a few things out and found some consistency. But it's just cool to see kind of that path and kind of how I feel like God's hand was really in a lot of it.
Had to be pretty neat too, when you're either having a moment at the All-Star game, or heck, even having a moment before you get called into pitch against Cleveland or against Houston in the playoffs, where you think, just a year and a half ago, when you're giving up 5 runs right before you have this peaceful moment, this time with God, and now look where he's brought you in less than 16 months, 15 months, if I'm doing my math right. It's got to be pretty cool when you think about kind of how you tried to stay faithful to God, and look where he brought you to.
Definitely. I had, some of those moments this year where it's, I don't know, you look back and it's like, man, so much can change in, a few months or a year. It's pretty incredible. I don't know. It's like when you can free yourself from performance, it's like, hey, I'm going to do my best. But like the results aren't the end all say all, and I think that freedom kind of just really allows God to kind of use your gifts and talents. And I think that's something that I kind of found. And, I was at this retreat this past weekend with UPI, and
Yeah.
Dallas Jenkins was talking about how he kind of had a moment of just the revelation of like, you can give your 5 loaves and 2 fish to God, and He's responsible for feeding the 5,000. I feel like the same thing is kind of in sports. Like when you get to that moment where you can just bring what you have and kind of let God do the rest, it's just a freeing spot to be. And I don't know, even over the course of a year, who knows what can happen, I think, with that. But just learning to trust in that, I think is obviously really, really cool to experience.
As we wind down, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but what has it been like being in New York and growing in your faith? We've talked about being on the road, but has there been a teammate or two or someone or, whatever it is, a clubhouse, worker, whoever it might be, that's been someone that you can kind of lean on to help you along? Because it's crazy. Baseball is such a long grind each and every year. And I've talked to a lot of players who talk about there's got to be someone that I can lean on to help me away from baseball within that clubhouse, to just help me spiritually, to let me bounce something off of them that has nothing to do with baseball, right? And real life stuff. Have you been able to find a couple of guys since it's been now, 2 seasons, a year, I guess, almost 2 full seasons with the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, there's some great guys in the clubhouse. Which obviously, baseball chapel is something new. They provide chaplains, and this past year, like I said, we had our team chaplains this first year. But me, when you think of chaplains, you think of someone like older, whatnot. Just not bad, but our new guy that we got, Jasmel, is a younger guy. He's around our same age, out of seminary, and to me, it's pretty cool just having somebody kind of your same age that you kind of relate and connect with. And I think it was huge for have him and his wife just to be able to talk with and bounce stuff off. But something I feel like I've just really helped me over the course of the last few years is the game's so like transient. You're constantly changing, whether you can trade or whatnot, and having some sense of community that's there out of in the off season and in season. So there's a few guys here in Nashville that, whether we meet through Zoom or whether we're in Nashville together, we'll meet. But it just kind of staples year round of guys that you can talk to. And, whether you're going through this or that, you have that trust there where you can share, and they're kind of in this with you. So I think having that, group of guys here in Nashville that we stay connected with in season and out of season, for me, it's kind of been huge because it provides some sense of just stability within a community that can change, and it does a lot.
Yeah, that's good. Clay, last question. I think I'm thinking about encouragement, right, with our audience and those who listen, and mostly people of faith who love sports, right? And so as you're thinking about the encouragement that you've received over your life, where in the Bible, what verse in the Bible maybe comes to mind, or pieces of scripture? You mentioned Romans 12, 1 and 2, which is a great verse, a couple of verses there that has helped you, and maybe leave that with our audience as some encouragement as we wind down here, and something that's guided you along on your faith journey from God's word.
Yeah, I think for me, especially the last few years, just kind of working through the Romans 12, 1 and 2, it's been huge because, especially as an athlete, the idea of kind of sports and just the meritocracy that it ingrains at you at a young age, you realize you're good at something, and it's just a natural process of like, you do good and you get more, you do good and you get more. It just becomes ingrained in you. And I think you can learn to become attached with that, and just be truthful with like your desires and kind of who you are, and just bring them before God. And you kind of get to the point where, you see, and he becomes your treasure. It's no longer you seeking to kind of be your best because you feel like God's blessed you with something, and it's like, oh, it's on me to do this now.
Yeah.
You just realize that freedom of like, when you become that living sacrifice, there's a freedom that comes with it that just allows you to just display the talents and the uniqueness that God's given you and the identity you have in Him, in a way that's much greater than you can do on your own. And I think just coming to experiencing that, not just knowing it, but experiencing that has really just changed my perspective on the way I view the game and the way I view myself. Um, but it's not an easy place to get to. I mean, it's hard sometimes to be truthful, and it takes experience, and it's not something that um, just happens because you say it won't happen. And I think just wrestling with that and being okay in that tension and just working through it with God is something that it's okay and that He wants. Still obviously something that I'm not perfect and I still struggle with things, but it's something that just being okay with that tension and, like I said, bring it before God and I think you kind of be amazed at how He kind of starts to speak to you and reveal truths to you that you can walk in.
He is Clay Holmes with the New York Yankees 2022 All-Star selection. I sense a lot of humility from you, which I really think is a great trait to have as an athlete, but also as a follower of Christ. And it's been really, really fun getting to know you a little bit and having you here on the show. We're all cheering you on, my friend, in 23, and we wish you nothing but the best this season. And hopefully we'll see you again next year and have you back on the show and be able to talk about all that God showed you and taught you this upcoming season.